Hi guys, welcome back. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different video this time. I'm going to do some updates to start, and then I want to talk about innovation in the game of Redemption, the overall health and state of the game, and what the community can do about that. So, GOC Phase 2 has been released. Pre-orders have been fulfilled. It's up on Lackey now. Thank you, Jaden, and thank you, MJ Bear. I think MJB, the guy who manages Lackey plugin. So thank you for that. And so people have been building with the cards. I went to the Arena Games this weekend, and I went and picked up another box. And so I've been building and playing with the GOC Phase 2 stuff. So it starts being legal on September 1st. We also got news about bans. So the Widow and Daniel from Cloud of Witnesses are now banned starting September 1st. And so a lot of the community has been calling for more bans. The elders are listening. They definitely have been doing that. And the elders have also been trying to find ways of improving the game. And so I came into the game a little over a year ago now. Roy introduced me to it, and ever since I've been trying to find ways that we can improve the game. Well, I've been trying to learn how to play the game. And so the best ways that I've come up with, or at least the only ways that I think that the community can do, or some of the ways that the community can do to better the game, are one, seeing what we can do to help or change the rules of the format. Two, we can look at more bans, more erratas, those sorts of things. And three, we can look at ways to innovate the game. So I've been having a lot of conversations with people on the Discord, some of the elders, some of the other members of the community. I've been trying to raise awareness about what exactly we as a community for Redemption can do to improve it. Some of the ideas that I've given out are like my exhaust idea, changing how the prep phase works. I've heard limiting the number of cards that you can use in the prep phase and the discard phase. Some people are calling for either more bans, different erratas, limiting the amount of territory class cards that you can have. And so a lot of what people are talking about is how we can increase interaction in the game, either through restricting the amount of things that people can do on their turns, or by banning the cards that are the most problematic, that are causing the least amount of interaction. And so, what does the current state of the game look like? Well, Nationals, we saw a lot of Widow. I think that was a archetype or a theme that was very popular in the game at that period. Now, it wasn't what won Nationals, but looking at it objectively, you could definitely tell the power level of Widow was a little bit too high in comparison to other decks, because it created consistency, being able to draw 12 cards maximum per turn for a player that couldn't easily be interacted with, right? There are cards that can interact with Widow. You've got Three Woes, Christian Martyr, Vain Philosophy, to name a few. If you have cards in territory and it's not the first turn, you have cards like Gamiel's Speech. But the issue becomes that first turn, person who goes first, the only thing that the opponent can do is use the 8 cards that they drew in their hand to try to stop their opponent from doing something. In my opinion, it's not enough. Only the 8 cards that they have in their hand, it's not enough to be able to overcome essentially what your opponent can do, because they can take those 8 cards that they have in the hand and they can go up to 16 and then play all those cards down and then try to do something else to get more. it's not very hard for your opponent to go through their entire deck on their first turn during their prep phase and then make an attack. And so, how do we fix that? Well, Widow was banned, so that's one avenue already closed. So that helps. But what's stopping this from happening again in the future? Well, in the new format, it's wide open. It's like the Wild West. With GOC Phase 2, there's a lot of different archetypes that are going to be really powerful. Defenses are really good. Some new souls that really help keep territory class stuff in check. But the problem, again, I think that's going to come up, is that inevitably, in my opinion, there's always going to be something new that's going to cause maybe not the same impact, but a different thing because of the lack of interaction that exists within the game. And so, without designing new cards, that's because that's happening. The other team is currently designing new cards that are going to help create different board states. They'll change how the overall game works, how it feels, interactions and stuff. That'll be cool. But how do we overall change the interaction of the game now to improve the health for the long term? How do we make Redemption more resistant to changes, to broken board states, to NPEs, negative play experiences, to lack of interaction? Well, that discussion has been going on for the last few weeks in the Discord. Some people have given some cool ideas, like a cool new card type, a turn 0 piece. I'm not personally an advocate of a turn 0 piece. Turn 0 pieces are cards that you get at the start of the game that are given immediate access to the player. I think this stifles the heart of what a card game is, where it's a randomized element. The whole reason why you would play poker over chess is because there's an element of randomness to it and bluffing. And then with chess, it's more about strategy and tactics overall, because all the things that could happen, right? When you look at a chessboard, or at least when a computer looks at a chessboard, right, it can see all of the possible, artificial intelligence can see all the possible moves that you can make, right? You can read all of the chess textbooks and learn from all the chess videos and simulate all the games possible. And you can sit across from a chess master, and still beat the chess master. When it comes to something like poker or trading card games, there's an element of randomness. So even if the computer can calculate all of the possible outcomes, it's not in control of the randomized element. For me, that's the best part of card games. Now, a turn 0 piece, one of the other issues that it creates is it fundamentally warps every format around those turn 0 pieces. My best example of this is a game that I used to play called Force of Will. They had turn 0 pieces called rulers, and they were essentially what you built your deck around. And you were trying your best to either utilize that ruler as a piece of utility or as your win condition to be able to beat your opponent. And so that ruler, that turn 0 piece, always became your fundamental asset, right? That was what you played everything about. Redemption is not really about that, right? It's about rescuing lost souls, people being redeemed who are lost. And so, as it was conceived, Redemption was always intended to function around the battle phase. And so how can we bring back focus in the battle phase? Because if we're being honest, most of the interaction of the game functions in the battle phase. Redemption already has a system to increase interaction. What is that system? The battle phase. People can play and take turns playing cards within the battle phase. There's a ton of strategy that can be put in place to create interactions within the battle phase, or limit the amount of interaction that your opponent has. But there's always the opportunity for it. There's a lot of opportunity for interaction in the battle phase. Control in Redemption, or defense heavy, has a lot of time or has a lot of struggles against speed decks in the current format, because speed decks can limit what your opponent does on the first turn in the prep phase without any interaction. Right? You can use the Widow combo, or you used to be able to use the Widow combo to be able to generate 12 cards before your opponent has the ability to respond, unless they have some of the cards that can interact, like Vain Philosophy, Three Woes, Chronicle of the Kings, or even something like Christian Martyr, to stop you from doing that. But you could set up a Golden Calf. You could put up the Cross, so that they can't interact. Then you can, put down a bunch of meat characters, go to battle, play Rhydon victoriously. If you put up the Cross, you can't play Rhydon victoriously, but you can go into battle and then play IJ, so Impartial Judgment, to discard X equal to your meek from evil cards from their hand. And so you have all of this ability to set up with very little interaction before the battle. But what if all of that had to focus and function around the battle phase? Excuse me. How would that look? How would that look for Redemption? Well, I think it would do nothing but help the game. And so people have been giving great ideas. There's limiting the amount of territory class cards that you can play in prep or discard phase. I'm not a huge advocate of that. Increasing bans. You've got... I've suggested removing the prep phase, or skipping the first prep phase for each player. Not an advocate of that. I think that's a pretty drastic change. But all of these dramatic or drastic changes that we have in the game, anything that we do that's a very broad stroke is good, but it shouldn't be enacted immediately. I think playtesting should be done to test out these formats. And the best way to do that is with an alternative format. And so I want to encourage the community to have all of these ideas, think of all of these things, and then potentially, if they feel to do so, play them out in an alternative format. Make your own rule set, play the game. You don't have to play Type 1. You don't have to play Type 2. You can play Type Northwest. You can play Type Half. There's all of these other formats that people have been trying to have different ways of enjoying the game. And I think that's the best way that we can find a way to center more interaction around the battle phase. Do I think we should limit the number of territory class cards that you can play in the prep and discard phase? I don't want to, but I think we might have to. Do I want to get rid of the prep phase? No, I think it's an interesting idea. It was always intended to be a thing to where you could activate an artifact or place down a site, and then territory class cards were created so that you could play them outside of battle as well. And while that was initially a cool change, and it added a lot of depth to the game, which the game has a lot already, it took away from interaction. And so we need to bring interaction back into the focus of what the game is. And so I really want the community to work together to change this, right? Because we're not, it's like somebody was saying in the Discord, we're not Magic the Gathering. We're not Wizards of the Coast. We don't have a multi-billion-dollar industry to where we can hire 300 playtesters to test all of these ideas, and we don't have an entire department for rules and regulations to be able to test new rule sets. Magic the Gathering has changed their Mulligan rule like 7 times. From its infancy, Magic the Gathering has updated its rules probably upwards of 50 times. There used to be no limit to the number of cards that you could play in Redemption, or in Magic. I think same with Redemption. I don't know if there's a limit to how many you could play, but those had to be implemented. Redemption fundamentally doesn't have those resources, right? Our leadership team is voluntary. They're a group of people who are just as passionate as everybody else about the game, and they want nothing but the health of the game. But they're restricted in what they can do because there's only so many of them. And so the community, I think, the best way to go forward, I'm not saying that we should mimic what Redemption is doing, but it's possible that we could use some of the, or mimic what Magic is doing. It's not a bad thing for us to innovate on some of the things that they've done. And I don't think that we should adopt, all of Magic's systems, but I think we should take note from the history that they've had and some of the problems that they've encountered, learn from them and adapt Redemption so that we don't fall into the same traps. We got to learn from the history of trading card games to improve the game that we have now. Redemption is a wonderful ministry. It is a great tool to be able to reach people. It's a fellowship tool. It's brought me closer with so many people that I probably never would have met, believers and non-believers alike. So anything that we can do to increase the enjoyability of the game, the interaction of the game, and the health of the game is good. And preventative measures are good to make sure that we don't have, as many negative play experiences, broken combos in the future. And so how do we do that? Well, in my personal opinion, I think we can update rules to be able to do that. Some people want to do bans, maybe new card types, but others also want to wait for new cards to come out. I think over time, new cards coming out will help change the game, but I don't necessarily think we should wait for that. And so, like I said before, try out your new formats. Try out a new ban list. Make your own ban list format. Use my exhaust idea in a format, to where the way that exhaust works is when you put a hero in territory and then use a territory class enhancement on them, they become exhausted, which means they can no longer use territory class cards. Or territory class abilities. So that character, now you turn him 90 degrees, he can't play another territory class enhancement on him. You have to have another character who can play it. And then those characters also can't go to battle anymore because they use their energy playing territory class enhancements. If you have a territory class character with a territory class ability, if you put that character into your territory during prep phase and use their ability, they become exhausted. They can no longer go to battle because they're doing something else. Like Music Leader. Music Leader goes into your territory. He is now leading music, and so he's occupied doing that, and that's where his energy is going to instead of going to battle. So thematically, there's a little bit of a tie in there. But that's just an idea. I don't know if that's the best idea. Getting rid of the prep phase is another idea. I don't necessarily think that's the best idea. But having all of these alternative formats in the game would be nothing but good for the game. Again, I'm not trying to make Redemption I'm not trying to make Redemption Magic the Gathering. But if we look at the history of Magic the Gathering, what is Magic's most popular format? It's Commander. Who made Commander? The community. The community made Commander, right? It wasn't Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast didn't create Commander. The community created it, and they continue to play it because it's what they love. It's what they enjoy. And so now Magic is supporting that. And so how can we as a community support Redemption, right, and innovate in ways to do that? I think the best way to do it is with alternative formats. And who knows, maybe somebody comes up with an alternative format that works really well, innovates on a lot of systems, increases interaction, and then everybody starts playing that. And then maybe we see that format at a national tournament. I wouldn't mind playing Type 1 alongside another format that has better, if not just as good rules, that changes how the game is played. That would be a lot of fun. my friend Joe Schaefer, came up with the idea of creating a experimental format where you have a rotating rule set. So it's where, like, I created an alternative format that I called an eye for an eye, and the way that it works is it increases interaction because during you share prep phases, you share draw, prep, and discard phases, and so even though it's not your turn, if your opponent chooses to play a card during their prep phase, you know, then you as the opponent get the opportunity to play a card after them in their prep phase. If it's a territory class card, you can place on a character. You can put a sight down. You can't activate an artifact, but if you play delivered, you can activate an artifact. You know, you can play High Priestess Plot. You can play Teaching in Parables. So that format is just another alternative rule set. And so you put that in Schaefer's experimental format, and, you know, for like 3 months, half a season, quarter of a season, a full season, you play with those rule sets. People try it out. They like it, they don't, you know, and maybe that becomes an official format. And then experimental cycles to a new rule set. Or, you know, it doesn't go over very well, people don't like how it plays, and then we just never play with those rules again. And that's fine too. So the health of the game right now, I think we're probably fine, metagame wise. The metagame is probably fine. To me, I think the health of Redemption could be better. I don't think it's perfect. I think Redemption is a costless system, right? There's no inherent cost to playing cards. And so there's nothing stopping people from playing all of their cards at one time. Except for the limit of 4 now. But that, outside of battle specifically, with little to no interaction, that's what's broken. And so how can we restrict that? How can we make conditions to where people cannot just go off all the time in their prep phase? I'm fine with somebody going off in their battle phase. If they want to use 20 cards in their battle phase and they have built their deck to be able to do that, go ahead, right? Because, you know, I can play my cards in battle phase. I can block with Goliath. I can present a new evil character. But during your prep phase, my evil characters, unless they're territory class, can't do anything. Does that mean we should, you know, just make every character territory class? No. Please, don't do that. Should we scale back territory class cards? Probably. Or we could change the rule set to keep all the cards that we have now and change the game surgically and systematically so that those are no longer an issue, right? The game had a way of balancing how cards were played, restricting them by brigade. Now we have so many cards that are multi-brigade that you can use with so many different types of characters that brigades almost seem meaningless. At least to me, you know, the restriction of brigades, when I build decks, there's very little resistance at all. I just put the cards that I want to play in a deck, and then I find characters that are strong that I can use to play them. And the decks still function. You know, they may not be perfectly consistent, but I could still do that. I could play all the territory class cards if I really wanted to. Unity restrictions. Unity restrictions are perfect, you know. Unity restrictions for, like, before they even had Unity, I think, like Job characters. You know, there's no Unity on Job characters, but why don't people use the Job defense in all of their decks? Well, it's a strong defense, but you can't have human heroes unless they're Job. And so what does that do? Well, in my opinion, it does nothing but improve the game. You know, it forces people to think about what they're doing. Unity is amazing because, not everybody can play A New Beginning. Now, that being said, I play Resetti, and so I put A New Beginning in every deck. But that's what I'm talking about, right? Pretty soon, if we keep having all of these cards that bounce characters, Unity requirements are not going to be that difficult to meet. And so, how do we fix the game? Again, I think the best way that we can do it is to go back to Rob Anderson's original design and focus the game around the battle phase, right? Have more ways for people to interact during the prep phase. Restrict players from playing so many cards during the prep phase and the discard phase. And incentivize players for playing cards in the battle phase. That's the best way to do it. How? What's the solution? What is the best solution? I don't know. But I think as a community, we should encourage each other to keep searching for it and finding it. Because if the game is systematically broken, the only people who can fix it is the community. And so the community really needs to come together and work on doing that. And so that's why I'm trying to raise awareness for the community to try to find solutions. So I'm going to be coming out with videos soon for alternative formats. I'm going to be talking about great ideas that people have been having in the community about these different formats, different card types, different rule sets, deck building restrictions, ban lists, erratas. Be kind of fun if you had an errata format with a bunch of these cards that we already have that just change some of the rules, or change some of the text on the cards. That would be a headache, but I think it would be kind of fun to try out. So I'm not opposed to any of these new ideas. I think they're all good. And I think as long as we have a heart for the game and we are compassionately and thoughtfully, respectfully working towards improving the game, nothing but good can come of it. So thanks for watching, guys. I know this was a little bit of a different type of video, but I just really feel like I've had this on my heart. I've been wanting to give it to the community, and I don't have any kind of funky music or anything to play in the background because it'll probably get copywritten, but I just wanted to bring this subject to the community. So, let's work together. Let's all work together to try to make the game a better place for everyone, and to glorify God more through all that we do. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you around.